Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We've got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Prescott girls soccer coach Paul Campuzano to discuss the benefits of club sports for players and coaches. We'll then be joined by Lee Williams boys tennis coach Matt Larson, who will discuss improving hand-eye coordination in younger players. But on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Bradshaw mountain wrestling coach Bud Nollet, who will break down his approach to coaching each weight class. All of that and a whole lot more on the other side of this break. Stay with us. Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports. I am joined by another familiar face of the program, Bradshaw mountain wrestling coach Bud Nollet. Coach Nollet, welcome back onto the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on completing the winter season. I know it was absolutely hectic. There was a lot of up and down as if the season was actually going to go forward, but thankfully we were able to get that full winter season, and the Bears had a great 2020/2021, a top 10 finisher as a team in state, bunch of qualifiers as well. Coach Nollet, it was your first year with the program, your first taste of high school wrestling. I want to ask, what is your assessment of yourself in your first year? In my opinion, a successful season, but I'd love to see what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree on the successful first season. I mean, regarding myself, I think for me, it was just another season. I know it's high school level, but I've always been around wrestling. So it's just, for me, it's normal. It's natural. I think my assistant coaches really stepped it up and helped me out a lot this year, as well as the school administrators and of course my team. So overall, I think the season was really spectacular. My guys did great, and for me, it felt normal. It felt natural. I was just really glad to see the guys do so well, and especially at sectionals. And I just look forward to the future of the program.
Well, now that you've got that first season under your belt, Coach, I mean, is there anything that you learned throughout the year, coaching techniques, coaching styles, maybe the way that you were communicating, you had to adjust it all? Was there anything that you wish you could tell yourself at the beginning of the season that you know now, any kind of changes that you noticed in your own coaching style?
Yeah, I think, first year of high school, there was a learning curve when it came to like the hydration tests. And then, of course, you had COVID on top of that.
Right.
It wasn't just for me, but for all the coaches. There was a few curveballs that were thrown at us from the AIA and having to wear the masks and everything. But, it's nice to get the first year out of the way under my belt. There were a few things that I learned kind of the hard way as I went. I have to say specifically with the hydration test, we had a guy not quite qualify for what he wanted to. He came in, with his football weight, what we call football weight, and he wanted to be a little lighter. So, like I said, we had to learn how to adapt to that, and we'll know more for that going forward. But it helped having assistant coaches that knew the process. Regarding my style, really, I felt comfortable with it. it's all wrestling. It's all basic stuff. So I was ready for the high school level in terms of wrestling.
Right.
It's just when it comes to all the other layers, like in terms of COVID and the hydration test, and then you had the parents and then the online learning was also a curveball, mostly for my guys, having to do the hybrid schooling. So that was pretty tough, mostly for them, but I really had to stay on my team for their grades all year too.
Yeah, we should make it clear here. Coach Nollet, this is not his first time coaching ever. He was a coach at the middle school. He also helped coach the club teams. They're called club teams down in Prescott as well. This is his first season coaching at the high school level. He has coached wrestling way before he even stepped on the campus of Bradshaw Mountain. But Coach, as I mentioned, your first season coaching the program at Bradshaw Mountain, you get 1 year, your first year, you qualify for the play for state. That's a tremendous achievement for a first time coach coming into a program that kind of already had a good structure and had some good direction. And now you kind of come in and pick up where Bradshaw left off and continue the strong success that the program had. But Coach, kind of going into your first state qualifiers, your first state matchups, your first time as a head varsity coach, how are you feeling stepping into state? And did you have to change your coaching style at all to sort of shape some of the talent you saw that you don't usually see throughout the season?
Yeah, I think so. Well, basically, it was Bradshaw's first year at winning sectionals. It was actually the first time we've ever done that. So that felt really good. That was a good notch in our cap. But so I knew we were peaking going into sectionals. We sent 11 guys to sectionals. We had 9 out of the 11 place and make it to state, which was unheard of for Bradshaw. First time in program history. But so we sent 9 guys to state, and for most of those guys, it was their first time going. There was a lot of jitters and nerves. And again, typically the teams used to having state here at the Prescott Valley Event Center. And so this year they had it down at Post Butte High School, which was about a 2.5-3 hour drive for us, which we did day of. So when it came to the level of wrestling and, getting my guys ready for that, I kind of knew what to expect. I think it was new for a lot of my guys. And we ended up having 4 guys place at state, which again was the most in Bradshaw's history. Right. But we had 3 guys that lost close matches in the quarterfinals. So we were right there between having 4 guys place at state, which we had. We almost had 7 guys place at state. So, but again, I think between the level of wrestling, state's a whole nother level. And it was the first time for a lot of my guys. And so, we're really proud of our season, but we also know that there's work to be done, and the fun is just beginning, so we're well on our way.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, like you said, Coach, it seems like more of a turnaround than as opposed to my earlier assessment, but more of a turnaround for the program here at Bradshaw Mountain. We all know that there are a lot of heavy hitters in Division III. Mingus is included in that. Obviously, Coconino, those 2 schools have been powerhouses when it comes to wrestling. Chino Valley, I know, is another good Division III wrestling school. They're very close to you guys in terms of geography. But, to coach, for you to step into your first year and to have a turnout like that, almost have 7 guys out of your 11 qualify in state, that's impressive. And some of those names of the guys who did qualify for state: Dion Zamora, Blake Hewenmeyer, who I know is possibly looking at wrestling at the next level. Asher King is another guy, just to name a few of the guys who got an opportunity to wrestle at state. But now, Coach, I want to ask you, you get off that long bus, you guys get an opportunity, long bus ride. You get off that long bus ride, you get an opportunity to get started at state. And you guys showed out, like I mentioned, top 10 finish in terms of the team at state. How did you like the way that your team performed in that for the first time in a long time, really, at state?
Well, again, I thought the guys did really well. It's something that we celebrate, and as a team, we felt really good about it. But deep down, I think we all know that we could have done better, and that there's work for improvement. But overall, I'm just really proud of the guys. State's a whole nother level, and like you said, Division III is a tough division. Safford won it. Sahuarita took second. Mingus was third. Like you said, Chino Valley's always tough. Coconino's tough. But we like the challenge. We don't shy away from those heavy hitters. And so we're looking forward to it. If we would have had those three guys, that lost in the quarterfinals, if they would have won and if they would have placed at state, and then actually our heavy hitter Nick Foshi, he had a good chance at placing first or second at state, and in the semifinals he actually dislocated his shoulders. Ooh. So he had to disqualify all the way down to fourth. But like I said, we just had a couple tough breaks right there at the end. The guys really wrestled tough, and the future's looking bright. We only have one senior. You mentioned Blake Hunemeyer. He's graduating this year. But besides that, we have our whole team returning, and we have some tough incoming eighth graders next year. Will be freshmen, and there was actually about 4 or 5 freshmen on the team this year that didn't break the lineup that will be coming back next year. So we're hoping to fill up all 14 weight classes next year and see if we can get all 14 to place at sectionals and make it to state, and show the Division III what we can really do next year.
Yeah, very much so. Again, we were speaking with Bradshaw Mountain Wrestling coach Bud Nollet. The Bears were able to qualify at state. They finished 10th as a team at the state finals. A lot of guys qualifying from their team. So a good start for Coach Nollet in his first season coaching the program over at Bradshaw Mountain. Most improved coach, I know you sometimes you'll have some new wrestlers or some guys who are coming back to wrestling. If you were to hand out a most improved award, who would it be?
Then we have our 170-pounder. His name's Caleb Hill, and he came out of nowhere this year. I actually coached him down at the middle school level, and he's always been a real good kid, really tough. But he was always on the smaller side. But this year, he's finally filling into his physique. He wrestled 170s, and he surprised a lot of people. He won sectionals, and then he went down there and he lost to Conrad Brady from Mingus, but he ended up coming back and took third at state. And he was a sleeper. No one expected him. No one saw him coming. And I wasn't surprised though, because he works really hard in the room. And he's a very strong kid. Anybody that wrestles him, he's just a really strong kid. And then I mentioned earlier our hammer, Nick Foshi, he wrestles 182. So they practice and practice every day together. And so they kind of, built each other up. So, but yeah, we had 4 guys placed at state. I do want to give a quick shout out. So Caleb Hill took third, and then we had a 4th place finish. You're going to put me on the spot. That was Nick Foshi, who could have placed top 2, 1 or 2, but he had to disqualify down to 4th because of his shoulder injury. And then Michael Kelly ended up 5th place. He's at 220. And then Blake Hunemeyer, our senior, he ended up taking 6th at 138. But that was a really tough weight class. McKean from Mingus, I think he ended up taking 4th, and he's one of the best wrestlers in the state. So it just goes to show you how tough that weight class was at 138 pounds, Division III. So Blake ended up taking 6th, and we were proud of him for that 6th place finish. He was always he wanted to place higher, of course, but that weight class was stacked. So I was proud of all the guys. They did a good job.
Well, Coach, I can tell you this, obviously we handle a lot of the Mingus broadcasts here at Yavapai Broadcasting. I do play-by-play for the Mingus wrestling team, and we did get a chance to call the Bradshaw Mountain and Mingus wrestling game or match, I should say, and it was one of the closest ones all year. Obviously there was supposed to be that matchup with Coconino that was unfortunately canceled due to COVID issues, and that was kind of a good preview as to the playoffs as well. But Coach, in your first year, you made a good impression against a tough Mingus Marauder wrestling team, really kind of almost putting it down to the wire, despite you did have a few wrestlers not there. But regardless, it was still a tough match that you guys almost won because despite the depleted numbers. So I would say, Coach, and you have attested to it, we both can agree, the future of the wrestling program at Bradshaw is one to keep an eye out on, because you're only graduating one senior. Blake Huenmeyer's gone. You return more than likely on paper everybody from last year, including those incoming freshmen that you just talked about. So going forward, Coach, I think Bradshaw is going to be one to keep an eye out for Division III, along with those usuals of Mingus, Chino Valley, and Coconino as well. I know you have a lot of admiration for Coach McKean and his program, Coach Smeater, obviously, in Coconino. A lot of respect shared from you to all those other coaches. But I can tell you what, I got a chance to speak with a few of those coaches, and they share the same sentiment that Bradshaw is definitely going to be one to watch out as we go forward. But Coach, I want to ask you something just really quick. Well, we've got some more time here. What is your approach with coaching different weight classes? This is a question that I've been trying to get to one of our wrestling coaches here that we've spoken to, but I want to ask you as a new coach, not only at the club level, but also at the high school level. I mean, where is that sort of technique with coaching a heavyweight to a lightweight? Are there different styles? Is there a different approach there? You're obviously a certain weight class, so you wrestled at a certain weight class. You have a lot of experience in that particular weight class, but some of the others, Coach, where do you go with that approach to teaching a kid who's bigger or smaller?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And all the, any seasoned coach will tell you, you definitely practice, and it's a different style for the heavyweights than it is for the lightweights. And then, of course, you have your middleweights there too. For me, growing up and wrestling, I was always on the lighter weights side, so that's my style. But I understand and appreciate, the heavier weights and their style as well. So, we acknowledge that and we run our practices, to follow suit. It's the same thing in the weight room. The big guys, obviously, they can push around the weight, but they're not as active as the little guys. So it's definitely that plays a huge factor in it. So for a lot of our heavyweights, it's a lot of leaning. They like to lean on each other, underhooks, overhooks, and, they just don't move around as much as the smaller guys. The middle weight classes are always tough weight classes because there's so many guys in the middle weights and they're strong and they're fast, so that's a whole, beast in and of itself. But, the fundamentals are all the same. Just staying in good position all the time and making smart moves, not getting out of good position. But yeah, what's nice for me is, we have coaches that work with the heavyweights, and then we have coaches that, we focus on the lighter weights and the middle weights, and this year with COVID, we actually, AIA rules suggested that we split up the team into different cohorts, so not everyone was exposed to everybody at the same time. And, that actually played in our favor a little bit. We were able to put the bigger guys together. So maybe not quite as much cardio. They still did a lot of cardio, a lot of lifting, and then they had their own separate practice. And then the lighter guys, lots of cardio, powerlifting, and then heavy on the drilling and the wrestling. So it was great. It was a good first season. I had a lot of fun. I'm always a little sad when the season's over, but it's funny too, because the heavyweights are just different when it comes to dieting and eating and being able to eat whatever they want versus and same with the smaller guys too. They're always trying to gain weight. And then you got those tough middleweights that are always watching what they eat and a lot of cardio. So, overall, it was just a great season. I was blessed because we have a great team, a lot of good guys. Almost all of them are coming back, and a lot of school support. Bradshaw really had our back, and our athletic director. So it was a good season. I mean, everyone else made my job easier. I have to give all them credit, and I won't tell them that, but they do a good job. Everyone steps it up, so it's nice.
Well, one season under your belt, Coach, and we hope to talk to you going forward, and hopefully one season will turn to 2, which will turn into 5, which will continue to go from there. A strong going in your first year, Coach. I think there's a lot to be excited about if you are a Bradshaw Mountain Wrestling fan. This gentleman right here is leading this program into some really, really good days, and this year is hopefully a good start to some more success going forward. Coach, thank you for coming on to the show. Well, good luck in the off season. We look forward to seeing those new freshmen next year and seeing the return to Bradshaw Mountain Wrestling. There is a lot of excitement stirring, and it starts with you. Coach Bud Nollet, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Philip. I appreciate it. I look forward to it, too. Thanks, buddy.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will talk with Prescott girls soccer coach Paul Campuzano. They also had a very, very good winter season. On the other side of this break, stay with us. Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules, and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports. I am joined by a familiar face of the program. He has been on multiple times to talk about his incredible girls soccer program, the Prescott Badgers head girls soccer coach, Paul Campuzano. Coach Campuzano, welcome back onto the show, which I believe is your third time back on the program.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's always nice to talk to you, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about. The Badgers had an incredible 2021 season, or I guess you could say 2020 to 2021 season, whatever you want to call it. This past winter season was great for the Badgers. They finished again undefeated, 11-0 here in 2021. Last year, they finished out in 2019, 2020 with a 12-0 record. Of course, a slightly shortened season this year, but nonetheless, very successful. Coach Campuzano, again, capturing another 4A Grand Canyon title. But Coach, going into the playoffs, you guys are the number one seed. How are you feeling stepping into the playoffs?
We were ready to go. I think, unfortunately, we were in a 2-year block of games where we weren't getting the work in I thought we needed to this season because so many teams had dropped out or changed schedules, or we lost games because teams had COVID, et cetera. So we were sort of ready to go. It was, the season was canceled and then we started up again, and everyone just wanted to get it done. So in case anything bad were to happen at the end. So luckily we kept everyone healthy. We didn't have to, forfeit a state game due to COVID or anything like that. So the girls were really, really ready to go. And it was nice to see just how focused they were leading into that first state game.
Yeah, it's a very much a all hands on deck kind of approach here, going down to the tail end of the winter season, which was almost canceled at one point and then was reinstated, and just absolutely hectic for you, Coach. But regardless, the Badgers had a great season going into the playoffs. You beat Paradise Honors to start off in round one. You face up against a 4A Grand Canyon opponent in the Lee Williams Volunteers. You beat them in round two, and then going into round three, a very formidable foe in the Flagstaff Eagles. I'm sure you love playing against Coach Jones and her squad every year in the playoffs, as they are usually a fixture in the playoffs as well. But you take on the Flagstaff Eagles. The Badgers had beaten the Eagles earlier in the regular season 1-0, but going into this one, Coach, a little bit different. You guys were able to take down the Eagles in overtime, but I want to ask, what did you learn from that first meeting that helped prepare you for this second meeting in the playoffs?
Well, I just want to start by saying it was nice to see that the Grand Canyon had four of the 8 teams in the final, the Elite Eight or whatever they want to call it. So I thought that was great for us. But going into that game, Flagstaff was a completely different team, and I noticed it right when we started. So we really could take very little away from that first game. We went to Flagstaff earlier in the year and beat them, and we were, really, really calm, really focused, and really patient. And so Flagstaff, when they came out in the semifinal game, like I said, it almost was like a completely different team. The way they played, the way they came at us, they really pressed hard to begin with, and admittedly we lost a little bit of our composure. When was it? Towards sort of the middle part of before the halftime, and I was a little concerned about that. We calmed down. And then we ended up giving up the first goal. And but at no point did I see anyone drop their head. I think the girls knew what they had to do to win. And, luckily it worked out for us. But unfortunately, it wasn't like looking at Lee Williams when they came in the second time we played them this year, and even Mojave when we played them the second time this year. You can kind of see right away that it was going to be the same thing. And if we took care of business, we'd be fine. But when Flagstaff came in, it looked literally like a completely different team. So we did have to sort of draw on experience when that happens with some of these really, really good teams, and stay focused and just, be patient. And that's the thing, when it gets hectic like that. The crowd was massive. It was so loud I could not even communicate with the players. It was almost like a football game, I guess is a good comparison. The stands were packed and it was loud on both sides. So, that the girls can sort of feed into that both negatively and positively. And luckily they were able to stay calm and see the game out. So.
Well, what a nice transition, Coach, to get a crowded house for that playoff game, as opposed to all season long you guys are playing with basically no fans in the stands, and you get back into that playoff atmosphere. And exciting. It must have been, first off, exciting for you guys just in general to start hearing fans again screaming in the stands. And like you said, it was so loud that it was hard to communicate with players, which, is a completely different shift from what you had in the regular season. But you talk about 4 teams representing the 4A Grand Canyon region. Coach, you've been a part of this region for a little while now. I mean, what does that tell you about the strength of the 4A Grand Canyon region, having 4 representatives in the playoffs this past season?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think, people still, when I tell them down in the valley or anything that I coach Prescott, they don't know us from anyone. So if I said Flagstaff, they probably would. But it's good. It's good that, these teams are, everyone goes through a cycle, and I'll be going through one here shortly. But it's just great to have these teams come in and come at us and really challenge us, because in the past, and it's not any disrespect to these schools, it was pretty straightforward when we would go to these games. And now when they come in, everyone's, there's no off days when we play any of the Grand Canyon teams. And I even mentioned Bradshaw, who we put a big number up against, but that's still Bradshaw, and that's still crosstown rivalry. And it's still a very intense game. So it's nice to see that, had we not won and Lee Williams had beat us, they would have handled themselves just as well going forward too. So it's good to see that.
Well, as I mentioned, the Badgers did beat the Flagstaff Eagles, the then reigning state champions. They beat them in overtime 2-1. Unfortunately, the Badgers did lose in the finals to South Point Catholic. But, Coach, 11-0, back-to-back undefeated seasons, that's a feat in itself. That is absolutely incredible. I know that it didn't end the way that you wanted to, but you send off 5 seniors this year after a very successful season. I just want to get your thoughts on your seniors and what they meant to the program throughout their time with you and the high school.
It's interesting because we had one play her first year with us and make the team, and then we had a transfer from another high school join us. And so it was nice to see them get sort of ingratiated into that team. That team's very strong. That team's very there's a lot of leaders on that team, and it's not easy to come into a team like this and either earn their respect or have them let you in behind the curtain, so to speak, with us. So it was great to see the 2 of them do that. And we're losing Indy and Helena, who are starters this year and very successful players, very smart players. And Helena really had a coming out in the playoffs, just became a whole new player and really helped us, almost saved us in a couple games with the way she can control the flow of the game. And that was wonderful. And unfortunately with the 5th one, Kaylee, she was ready to start this year at the other side opposite Indy after waiting, and then had an ankle issue where she'd be fine for 5 minutes and take a step and go down. And so we sort of had to shut her down. I got her a few minutes into senior night, but really she was in serious pain the whole time. And she lost her senior season that way. But, they were wonderful. They're very strong, very, very good leaders, both on and off the field. And the girls flocked to them for different reasons. Kaylee's one of the most competitive players we've ever had here, but you just don't get to see it because she never got to play. But so it'll be sad to see them go. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. And it's very unfortunate that one player did not get to see their entire season played out. But like I mentioned, it was a hectic winter season regardless. The season was canceled at one point, then it was reinstated. So, it's unfortunate that injuries plagued one of your players' senior years, but we were able to finish out the soccer season. Coach, going forward, you bring back a very heavy senior class. It includes both of your leading scorers, Carrie Kassoon and Nicole Race. Both of them, I think Carrie had 30 goals this year, and Nicole was right behind her with like upper 20s. Yes. But regardless, Coach, going into next season, what are your thoughts on if you give us a brief preview? I know we still got a lot of time before we start the season, but you bring back your 2 leading scorers. How are you feeling going into next year? I know it's going to be a heavy senior class.
Yeah, on paper, that's how people were trying to console me after that loss in the finals. Oh, you'll have these girls back. But at some point, you can't keep saying that. We've lost 15 girls in the last 2 years, and we had 2 that chose not to play this year. One would have been a starter, and one was a very good player too. So, that's 17 players. Now, are all these people going to come back next year? We don't know. And I'm hoping with our JV group that I can add a few and get them, I mean, more than a few, get them up early, a couple freshmen up in so that they can see, because after next year, it's going to be real interesting. So, I mean, you just never know. I didn't think we'd win as many games as we did this year. I mean, there's always the idea that we could, but you never know with the stopping and the starting. And do these girls keep in? They're coming to that age where they sort of are drifting off from really, really focusing. It's sort of that junior year when they start doing more things in their life outside of sports. So it's hard to keep them engaged and involved. And luckily we were able to. There's, like I said, there's a solid group there that is very dedicated to what we're doing. A lot of them started as freshmen, 2 of them anyway, and then others joined the team shortly thereafter. So they've seen what's been going on. They've seen how 3 years ago we didn't have really a chance to beat South Point in the semifinals of state. But this year we could, I almost want to say very easily could have won, but had we took one of our chances in the first half and gone into halftime 1-0, you don't know what's going to happen going forward. So, but we were in that game. They weren't a team that was unbeatable by any stretch of the imagination. So they see what's happening and how it's getting better, and we're doing more things and trying to confuse teams, not just showing up and playing. So hopefully that'll keep them interested, but you just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen until next year.
Again, we were speaking with Prescott girls soccer coach Paul Campuzano. The Badgers finished out the 2020 to 2021 season 11-0, made the playoffs, had a great season. Coach, you mentioned your JV team also had a pretty strong season. I know JV isn't necessarily, you're not really focusing on the wins and losses. There's no playoffs. It's just more getting players prepared for the next level. You talked about it. There's a few players that you're excited about to see next season. So I want to ask you, just in general, how have you liked the development of your JV team? Does it give you a little more confidence going forward? I know you've got a big senior class coming up, but in terms of the program going forward, how have you liked the development at the JV level?
It's been great. They lost their first game this year to Notre Dame.
Game of the season too, which what a sad way to end here.
Yeah, the first time in 5 years that they've lost. So it's been great. And that's the kind of game they need. I mean, they play Flagstaff a couple of times every year because they add games because they're always short, and they do well against Flagstaff. But something changes when those kids in Flagstaff get to the varsity because they all seem to be ready, yet they're losing at the lower level. So I don't know what Holly does, but it's great. So yeah, there's a couple. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to carry a real high number team this year, and some of those girls are going to miss out on playing games because I need them to develop. I'm not concerned about them playing. So they're going to need to see how we do things maybe a little bit earlier than I would like. But with having 2 years ago, we had a giant class leave, and we're going to have another one leave this next year. So I can't have them coming in after that wondering, what do we do here? They need to see it every day, and they need to get real comfortable with how we're going to do things. So it'll be interesting. But JV's been great. They, we've talked about how we run one system at the school, and we get them ready so that this year I think I called up 3 girls to just ride with us to the state, just sit on the bench and hang out with us in state just to see some things. And, it's nice to know I did put one in the champion. I put a freshman in the championship game, and I'm like, well, let's see what she can do. And so it's good to see them get ready and the excitement. They're so happy to be there finally with the girls. So, but I think, Greg gets them ready. Greg Goods, the coach there, he gets them ready. And like I said, he's always asking for games. He asked for the Notre Dame game. He asked for second games with Flagstaff. So it's really important they play. It's really important that they lose. It was the first time they're losing, and they sort of lost their cool. And so I had to bring him aside and talk to them and say, look, this is what's going to happen next year. We haven't lost in 2 years, but that's not the rule. Right. That's not normally what happens. So how are you reacting when you lose, and how are you reacting during a game when you lose? Because I think this year, in the first game of the season, that was the first game those girls, we were down in a game,
Right.
And then it happened again in Flagstaff in the semifinals, and they reacted properly, and they came back and scored 2 goals and won. I think we scored 5 at Mojave when we were down 1, I think. So it's just, they need to learn that. They need to see that it's okay to give up a goal. It's okay to be losing. So it's nice.
Yeah, very much so. A lot of players, especially younger players, I myself struggle with it a little bit, that feeling of losing. Especially, I played on a JV baseball team where we went undefeated the year before, and we got our butts handed to us couple times after that, and it hurt a little bit. But yes, I agree. I think it is important to learn how to win and learn how to lose, especially when you've got a successful program much like yours. But Coach, before we send you on your way, it is the off season now. It looks like you're at home enjoying that beautiful view behind you. Or very reminiscent of the first time that we spoke way back when in the show's origin. But you're a club coach as well, Coach. We always talk about the importance of club sports for the players. We don't necessarily talk about the impact it has for the coaches, because unlike maybe let's say a baseball coach who's just kind of waiting for the spring to start, and if they don't coach any other sports, you yourself coach the girls soccer team. You don't necessarily coach another sport over at Prescott, but at the club level, you get to continue coaching. So I want to ask you, Coach, as somebody who is a club coach, how important is it for coaches to keep that training or that repetition of being a coach going forward if they're given the opportunity to coach club?
It's been great. I'm with Phoenix Rising Youth Soccer, so we have a branch up here in Prescott, and it's nice because I coach a 07 girls team, and then my son's on an 08 boys team. So it's nice to be able to coach younger kids because my approach is completely different with the older kids. But then you learn some things about that you can use, and so I'm always being challenged down there. We had both my teams were in different tournaments this weekend. One was in the Valley, one was up here. So you're turning it off and on. I obviously coach girls differently than I do boys. It's just different. And so it's nice. It keeps me, constantly wanting to grow and challenge them. And then in turn, can I bring something up to the older girls and something maybe one of the younger girls has said during the weekend. And so it's nice. It's nice to be involved with that. It's a little tiring. It's coming to a close here next weekend, which would be nice. I'll have probably a month off before we get going again. But it's good. I think it's important for me because I'm somewhat lazy. So it does keep my brain going. It keeps me involved. It keeps me moving. And so it's good. And I'll see some of those girls in the high school next year from that team. And then I also think it's important. I encourage everyone, especially the boys. My son plays football. He plays baseball. And I think it's important for them to get away from soccer and not only that, but hear a different voice than mine. So, and it's good. It's good that they try new things. But yeah, the club's very important. All the girls who will be seniors next year are on a club team together. The 10 that left, is it now 2 years ago? Oh my gosh. They were on a team together. So it does translate well when I get them. And I'm close with the coaches that they have because they're all rising players as well. So it's good to be able to talk to the coaches. They'll talk to me. Hey, do you want me to do anything different? I'm like, nope, do what you do. I do what I do. And so it's nice for them to have sort of a break for me while still playing the same sport.
Back-to-back undefeated seasons for the Prescott Badgers, and they're hoping to translate that as well into 2021 and 2022 success next winter. But Coach, there is now the off season. You've got so much time now to prepare for that, and we want to thank you very much for coming on the show and talking to us a little bit about this past season. Congratulations on finishing the winter season, and we look forward to a successful off season and talking to you again during the winter sports season.
Yes, no, I'll be available anytime you want. It's wonderful talking to you. I appreciate it a lot.
Of course, Coach. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Lee Williams High School boys tennis coach Matt Larson on the other side of this break. Stay with us. Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports. I am joined now by Lee Williams High School boys tennis coach Matt Larson. Coach Larson, welcome onto the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. I know you've only been coaching the program for a very short time now, about 6 weeks, you told me. But, Coach, regardless of how long you've been with the team is performing very, very well to start the season. 4-0 to kick off the 2021 season. I know it's only been a short sample size for you, but, I mean, what have you liked from your guys so far?
You know, I was really blessed to inherit some really solid tennis player at the top of my lineup, and they kind of set the tone for the rest of the team. And so just 4 weeks in, I'm already seeing the bottom half of my lineup make huge jumps because they have good role models in watching the other guys, but also in practice. Logan Rosenbach's my number one, and Colin Juliff's number two. They're giving these guys pointers as well. And so we didn't know what to expect coming off of a lost season last year. Me being a new coach in Arizona, I've coached in Northern California before. And so I couldn't be happier about the start that we've had.
And like I said, it has been an absolutely impressive start, and you guys are winning matches very handedly. Nothing really close. Lee Williams has had a more recent history of success with their tennis program, starting when, funny enough, your lone senior Logan was a freshman. He kind of led the charge of that rebirth of the program. The tennis team did fantastic in 2019. Obviously, 2020 was a lost season. But here in 2019, new coach, you have a 4-year starter in Logan Rosenbach. I mean, for you being a new coach, what is it like to have somebody who's got that leadership, who has been with the program for all 4 years? I know you do have a few returners, so there are some guys who were familiar with the program, but not to the extent of Logan.
Right. Logan is a coach's dream. And like I said, I've coached before. I haven't had a player of his caliber, and I've had some really talented foreign exchange students from South America too. So it makes it really fun for me to have a guy who's playing at just an elite level who you don't have to teach any basics to. And so it's mostly just strategy with him. And, you know, he's undefeated on the season. And so there's been some matches where he doesn't even need to talk to me before the thing's over. So it's just a real treat. Tennis is a beautiful game, and Logan plays all the strokes perfectly. And so people should just come out and watch him play tennis and be like, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like.
I'm somebody who has a tough time with my forehand would be the return serve, because I played baseball for so long. Yeah. So that forehand serve turns into more of a baseball backswing, and it goes right over the net. So I'll definitely have to check out Logan, somebody who knows exactly what they're doing.
Good. I recommend it.
We've, you've also got, along with the senior in Logan Rosenbach, you've also got a few sophomore and a few juniors. You've got some freshmen who are playing very, very well right now. Tyler McNevin and Brigham Dameron are two guys who have been playing very, very well. You're a new coach. You're trying to continue to build the program. What is it like to get those young players, the freshmen playing well, to continue the growth of the program during your tenure with the team?
Well, they're our future. You know, we're very well of that. In a few weeks, our season will be over, and it's nice to have some freshmen coming in with a lot of excitement, a lot of energy. These are two freshmen that, you know, in the first weeks of practice, we're getting tuned up on how to keep score, and they've got some natural ability. Brigham has taken some lessons before, and so they went out there, they competed, and they're gamers. And so I think some of their just athletic ability, they play soccer, both of them, that really helps them, especially in the 5, 6, and 7 spots where they've competed. Being a good athlete really helps you if you're playing guys who are also just learning the game like they are.
Yeah. But, you know, even you talked about a little bit, Brigham had taken some lessons, so he was already kind of familiar with the sport. I'm curious, you know, obviously Logan is maybe the exception to somebody who's just played the sport for a long time and has picked it up very well. When you're looking at your roster to start out the season, you know, are you getting a lot of those year-round tennis players? Are you getting more of those dual sport athletes like Brigham? I mean, what would you say is sort of the what makes up the roster in terms of the experience level?
My roster primarily are guys who focus on other sports, and tennis is their second sport, and they want to have fun in the spring. And we also have a history of some really good athletes playing tennis for us. And so I think people who are really good basketball players have seen some of the basketball stars on the tennis team in the years past, and they're like, okay, there's something about the game of tennis that's translated to other sports. And so they want to be here for that. But, just starting new and having a lost season, I just want to build the program. And so if we can get as many good athletes as we can possibly find and people who want to learn the game, we have the ability to teach them the game, and you can only go up as you get better. So it's just a lot of fun, but we're definitely just beginning at Lee Williams right now, which is cool.
Yeah, very much so. And Coach, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, you do take over for a program that did have some success in 2019, some success as well in 2018, of course, with 2020 being gone. But even in 2020, Coach, the program started out 2-0. So, I mean, it seems like you're picking up right where they left off and continuing the success that the program has seen before.
Yeah, definitely. And, my heart breaks for last season. They were about as strong as I think we possibly could have been. Guys who were on JV for that team are playing 3 for us this year, just to show you how strong that was. But, I appreciate the compliments, and I hope we can keep the success with the program going.
Again, we were speaking with Lee Williams high school boys tennis coach Matt Larson. Right now, the Volunteers are 4-0. Unfortunately, there was a cancellation with their game that was supposed to happen this week, but they will focus their attention next week on the Barry Goldwater Bulldogs, I believe the mascot is.
Yep.
Coach, let's go back to the roster question. Obviously, you're at a little bit of a different position with coaching tennis. Baseball, you have a JV team. You have a pretty expansive roster of more than 9 guys. You're kind of playing with limited numbers. So you really have to pick and choose who you put on your roster because you don't have a JV team. You don't have an expansive roster where you can give a guy who just needs a little bit more coaching, some more attention. So, I mean, do you feel that that's at a disadvantage for you because you have to pick a limited number, or do you see it as an advantage because you have to pick the best of the best?
Well, I think if I had a JV or not, we would still be picking from the best of the best. And I think ideally it would be good to have about double the number of kids we have to start the year. And that's my goal for next year, is to add a whole bunch more tennis players. But it's like in any sport, the more competition you have for the open starting positions, the better your team is going to be. And so, it's a pretty intense tennis. For people who don't play, I don't think they realize how intense it is. And the only thing I compare it to, honestly, is boxing, because you're in that ring by yourself. In basketball, which I also played in high school, if I was having a bad game, I can pass. I can go rebound. It's not on me. But when these guys are out on the tennis court, it's them, and there's no one to come and save them. And so what makes setting our roster intense is that you're competing against your own teammates. And everyone wants to make varsity, so they get to travel, so they get to play. And I have to walk a fine line of encouraging the competition, and then yet at the end of the day, we're still a team. And so my number 1, Logan, and my number 2, Cohen, are really, really talented tennis players. And so I was actually nervous the night before their challenge match, because I knew it had high stakes for Logan, who's a senior, and Cohen, who wants that spot. And boy, I tell you what, that match, I called it the Clash of the Titans. And the good thing is they're supportive of one another. They're actually cousins. They're a doubles team. And I told them before their challenge match, look, you guys are going to be a doubles team after this. Treat each other well in this match. And so to set our roster, we have guys challenging each other for spots. They play a match. The winner kind of takes all. When I started the season, we didn't have a lot of time for challenges. So I based the roster kind of on where guys finished last year. What I could just see with my eyeballs, how developed their tennis skills were. But the guys, they're all winning, and they're all still wanting to challenge one another. And I'm kind of like, it's hard to let a guy who just won his match 6-0, 6-1 have a guy a spot below who won his match 6-0, 6-0 come and take it, because, no one's losing for the most part. So good problem.
It makes for good competition within the team. And, as you mentioned, now you've got a relative playing alongside a relative in the doubles, which is great. Like I mentioned, the team is, whatever you're doing, Coach, is obviously working. The team is currently undefeated. I want to talk a little bit more about coaching specifically. I myself have only really played tennis casually. I know that it is a sport that has a very a lasting impression for a lot of kids, because you can play tennis when you're 14, you can play it when you're 44, you can play it when you're 94. It's just like golf, one of those sports that doesn't necessarily stop because of age, whereas basketball and football and soccer are a little bit more pressing on the body, whereas golf and tennis more leisure sports, of course. So I want to kind of talk here. When you're coaching doubles and singles, what are you approaching? What is your approach with coaching those two separately?
Well, we actually try to give our kids almost that boxing mentality. When I send them off, sometimes I'll be like, okay, it's time to go to war. Because it really is, it's man versus man. And if you're equally matched against your opponent, it takes as much mental strength as it does anything else. The other thing is tennis can be grueling. Our number one singles player, if he plays 2 sets in singles and a doubles match, he'll have done about 8 miles according to his watch.
Yeah, just right for that little square too. You cover a lot of space.
You really do. And there's no halftime. There's no quarter breaks. You're going sometimes 2 hours nonstop. So, and in Arizona, it can get warm. And so we're just heading into the hot season. So it's an endurance sport. It's very intense like boxing, and it requires a lot of mental fortitude. In singles, it's very much like that. A lot of the guys love playing doubles because there you have a teammate, there you have a partner, there you have someone who can talk you off a ledge, who you can make a few mistakes and they say it's no big deal, let's get the next one. And so I think the guys end up enjoying doubles a lot because they have a teammate out there with them.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I know myself, as somebody who does struggle with tennis, if I was starting early out, I might appreciate more of having that doubles there so I can learn from a player like Logan, or just learn from somebody who's been a part of the sport a little bit more. Forehand and backhand. I already explained my struggles with the forehand and backhand, but is it easier for somebody who's new to grasp the forehand as opposed to the backhand? Which of the two is a little bit easier for younger players to learn?
Well, it certainly seems like the forehand is more natural for people, but in reality, once they learn proper form, the backhand is actually the more natural of the swings. It's interesting. There's fundamentals just like in any sport. If you have someone who's shooting a basketball and their elbow's sticking sideways, they're never going to make it. And so just like any sport, if you can get grounded in the fundamentals, Philip, you can get better a lot faster. And if you're learning bad habits, you're going to have a lot of extra to overcome. And so for us, it starts with our grip. The grip of the racket controls the racket face. The racket face determines where the ball goes. And so the first day we are going over those grips and the secrets to finding those grips, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me a little bit of baseball. We were always taught, gripping the bat, knuckle to knuckle, or I lined it up like, kind of the knuckles to the knocking fingers or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, of course, the technique is obviously step one, and learning the grip and making sure that you have those little finite details figured out before you start working with the forehand and the backhand. It's kind of interesting, Coach. You talk about the parallels between, tennis and other sports. A lot of basketball players play tennis. We can both agree the footwork is definitely one. There's a lot of foot movement in tennis. The hand-eye coordination is another one. Hand-eye coordination, huge for baseball, basketball, football, really any sport. But what if you have somebody who struggles with hand-eye coordination or struggles a little bit with their feet? How do you approach either of those problems?
Well, we make the court small. So for the beginners who, when you start with little kids, you actually toss a ball to them, it bounces on the ground, and they practice catching.
Oh, okay.
Then you toss it, they bounce, and they practice just a little swing. And so with the real beginners, and we actually begin all our practices like this anyway, we actually start halfway towards the net.
Okay.
And you just rally and you make the court small. And then as you get your confidence up, you move back. So that's kind of, you try to make the game smaller until you can make it bigger, if that makes sense.
Just real quick, Coach, before we get into the matchup with Barry Goldwater, what is something that younger players struggle with, just kind of briefly?
Well, exactly what you said, just getting the racket face on the ball, not hitting the frame. Where the racket face points, so if my hand's pointing up, the ball is going to go up. And so just learning how to hit the ball flat and move it forward, not up or down.
I think that might be my struggle as well, Coach. I'm very much hitting the ball with the racket facing all the way up, and I'm sending it over the wall. If that counted for points, I probably would have lettered in tennis in high school, but I did not. So, Barry Goldwater, Coach, trying to keep the undefeated streak going. You take on Barry Goldwater next week. How are you feeling in that matchup?
We're feeling pretty confident. We're feeling really good about our squad, and we were supposed to be playing a match this Thursday. And with that being canceled, what it allows us to do is spend extra time in practice. And so I'm bringing multiple lesson plans to our practices. I have my 1 and 2 who are very advanced, really practically training each other and working on things that they need to be at their sharpest. And I'm taking my 3 through 7. And we are taking different parts of their games where they're weak. And so yesterday we're working on volleys, and I joked we're going to hit 9 million volleys today. We probably hit 6 million as a joke, but I'm using the extra practice time as an opportunity to really shore up some weak spots. Because that's the greatest joy for me, is as the season progresses, seeing someone who couldn't hit a volley or overhead for their life and then see them execute it to win a point in a tennis match. It's really rewarding for me and for them. And so I'm trying to keep my top dogs hitting the ball with lots of pace and working on strategies. And boy, I'm hoping that we show up at Barry Goldwater with some new skills for the lower guys.
Should be a lot of fun. Again, Lee Williams boys tennis coach Matt Larson. Coach Larson, congratulations on this hot start of the season. We look forward to see where the Volunteers finish out. They play the Barry Goldwater Bulldogs very soon. But Coach Larson, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show, and we're excited to see where you take this program going forward.
Thank you very much. I love being here.
That's going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. I'd like to thank Coach Matt Larson, Coach Bud Nollet of Bradshaw Mountain Wrestling, and Coach Paul Campuzano of Prescott Girls Soccer. Again, that is going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. Next week, we'll be joined by some more great guests, including Mike Schmieder of Coconino Boys Wrestling. All that and a whole lot more on the next edition of Off the Bench. For all my guests, I'd like to thank you for watching and listening. I'm Philip Katafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.